When my daughter told me to leave the house I helped build, my first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion so sharp it made my ears ring. I remember standing there in the doorway, one hand still resting on the edge of the kitchen counter, the other clutching my cardigan like it might slip off me if I let go. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something burnt, toast maybe, the same smell it had carried for years. The same house where I'd kissed scraped knees, paid bills late, cried quietly into dish towels so no one would hear me. And now my daughter was standing across from me, arms folded, eyes flat, telling me I had 3 hours to pack. Not because I'd done something wrong, not because I'd hurt her, but because she had $33 million now and she didn't need me anymore. Her voice was calm when she said it. That calm hurt more than if she'd screamed, "Mom, I think it's best if you find somewhere else to stay for a while. For a while." That's what people say when they don't plan on ever letting you come back. I looked at her face, searching for the child I knew, the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when I worked late, who once sold her favorite bracelet at school because she wanted to buy me a birthday cake. But that girl wasn't there anymore. In her place stood a woman wearing a silk blouse I didn't recognize, manicured nails tapping impatiently against her arm. 3 days later, she was on her knees in front of me, sobbing so hard she could barely speak, but I didn't know that yet. Before the money, before the lawyers and the quiet cruelty, our life was simple, not easy, never easy. But simple. I was a single mother for most of my daughter's life. Her father left when she was 6, not in a dramatic way, not with shouting or slammed doors. He just packed his things one afternoon and said he needed space. That space stretched into years, then decades. I learned quickly not to wait for people who said they'd come back. We lived in a modest two-story house on a quiet street where the neighbors waved but didn't pry. The house wasn't fancy. The paint chipped in places, and the upstairs bathroom door had to be pushed just right to close. But it was home. I bought it with money from my job as a medical billing clerk and a small inheritance from my own mother, not millions, not even close. Just enough to make a down payment and breathe a little easier. My daughter, Emily, grew up there. Her height marks were still penciled onto the pantry door frame, faded but visible if you knew where to look. I never erased them. I liked knowing they were there. Our mornings were quiet. Coffee for me, cereal for her, then toast when she got older and pretended cereal was childish. She liked her toast almost burnt, said it tasted strong. I liked mine soft. We used to joke that it matched our personalities. Emily was bright, sharp, ambitious in a way that scared me sometimes. Even as a teenager, she spoke about the future, like it was a place she planned to conquer, not just arrive at. I encouraged her maybe too much. I told her she could be anything, do anything, go anywhere. I never once told her to slow down. That was my mistake. When she went to college, she studied finance. Numbers made sense to her in a way they never had to me. I was proud, deeply, painfully proud. I worked extra hours to help with her expenses, skipped vacations, wore the same coat for years so she wouldn't have to worry. When she graduated, she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "I'm going to take care of you one day," she said. I believed her. After college, she moved back home, said it was temporary just until she figured things out. I didn't mind. I liked having her there. The house felt warmer with her laughter, louder with her phone calls, messier with her shoes by the door. We fell into a rhythm again, shared dinners, late night talks, small arguments about laundry and electricity bills. Then came the call. It was a Tuesday evening. I remember because I was making soup the cheap kind, with noodles that always broke apart too easily. Emily was in the living room, pacing. Her phone rang, and she stopped mid-step, like her body knew something before her mind did. She answered it quietly at first, listened, then sat down hard on the couch. I didn't ask. I just watched her face change, surprise melting into disbelief, disbelief cracking into something like awe. Her free hand started shaking. When she hung up, she looked at me like I was a stranger. "Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I just inherited $33 million. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was impossible. $33 million didn't happen to people like us. It happened to people on television, people with last names that meant something. I thought it was a prank, a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. An estranged great uncle I'd barely heard of. A complicated estate, no spouse, no children. And somehow, through a tangle of family lines and legal decisions, the money landed with Emily. $33 million. I hugged her. She cried. I cried. We sat on that couch for hours, the soup forgotten on the stove, imagining possibilities we'd never allowed ourselves to imagine before. A better life, security, freedom. I didn't realize that night was the beginning of the end of the life we shared. Because once the money arrived, Emily didn't just change her plans. She changed her tone. And slowly, so slowly, I almost missed it. She started acting like the house wasn't ours anymore. It was hers. The money didn't arrive all at once. That's something people don't tell you. Inheritances don't usually fall into your lap like a suitcase full of cash. They arrive in pieces, meetings with lawyers, documents thicker than phone books, words like fiduciary and asset allocation floating around the kitchen table while your coffee goes cold. At first, Emily handled it quietly. She took calls in her bedroom, shut the door when lawyers came over, spread papers across the dining table late at night. I gave her space. I didn't want to seem greedy or curious in the wrong way. It wasn't my money. I knew that. Still, things began to shift. She stopped asking me about my day, stopped sitting with me during dinner, choosing instead to eat on her phone, scrolling, typing, smiling at messages I wasn't meant to see. When I spoke, she listened, but only halfway. Her eyes drifted, her mind elsewhere. Little comments started slipping out. "Mom, do you know how outdated this kitchen looks? Have you ever thought about downsizing? This neighborhood isn't really aligned with where I'm headed." She said things like that casually, like observations, not judgments. But each one landed heavy. I tried to laugh them off. "We've done just fine here." I'd say she'd smile thinly, sure, for now. I told myself she was overwhelmed. That money does strange things to people at first. I remembered how shaken she'd been the night she got the call, the disbelief, the fear wrapped inside the excitement. I thought she just needed time to settle. Then she hired a financial advisor. He came over one afternoon, tall, polished, expensive, smelling. His suit looked like it had never known a wrinkle. He shook my hand politely, but spoke to Emily like I wasn't in the room. They sat at the dining table where she once did her homework, whispering numbers and strategies. At one point, he glanced at me and asked, "And you live here as well?" The way he said "as well" made my stomach tighten. "Yes," I said, "this is my home." Emily didn't correct him, didn't add anything. She just stared at her laptop. That night, I tried to talk to her. "Are we okay?" I asked, leaning against the counter while she poured herself a glass of wine, something she'd never liked before. "You feel distant," she sighed, like I'd asked something inconvenient. "Mom, you're overthinking everything," she said. "I just have a lot going on, I know," I said gently. "I'm proud of you. I just don't want us to drift apart." She paused, glass halfway to her lips. "We won't," she said, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Over the next few weeks, the house changed. Furniture catalogs appeared on the coffee table. Contractors walked through rooms, measuring walls, murmuring about renovations. Emily talked about turning the guest room into an office, her office, even though it was where my sister stayed when she visited. "It makes more sense," she said. "I need space to work." Then came the night she told me she wanted to put the house in her name. "Just temporarily," she said, sitting across from me, fingers folded neatly like she was presenting a business proposal. "For tax purposes, it's smarter. I felt something cold slide down my spine. But the house is in my name, I said. I paid for it, and you'll still live here, she replied quickly. Nothing changes, it's just paperwork. Paperwork. That word has a way of disguising decisions that can ruin lives. I hesitated. She noticed. Mom, she said softly, reaching across the table, placing her hand over mine. I'm trying to protect us. Don't you trust me? I did, or at least I wanted to. I didn't sign anything that night. I told her I needed time to think. She nodded, but the warmth in her eyes cooled. From that point on, the tension became impossible to ignore. She stopped inviting me to sit with her when guests came over, new friends. Polished people with loud laughter and expensive shoes. I found myself retreating to my bedroom, listening to their voices float through the walls, feeling like a guest in my own home. One evening, I overheard her talking on the phone. Yes, I know it's complicated, she said. She's still here, but I'll handle it. She's still here. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. I waited for her to say my mom. She didn't. That night I barely slept. The first clear sign, the one I couldn't explain away, came 3 days later. I came home from work to find my bedroom door open, drawers pulled out, my jewelry box sitting on the bed, its contents rearranged. Emily stood there, holding one of my old photo frames, the one with a picture of me and her at the beach, her hair tangled by the wind, my arms wrapped tight around her. I'm just reorganizing, she said. This room could be used more efficiently. Why are you in here? I asked, my voice shaking despite my effort to keep it steady. She looked genuinely surprised. Because this is my house now, Mom. The words landed like a slap. What do you mean? I whispered. She exhaled, impatient. I mean, things are changing, and I think it's time we acknowledge that. I left the room before she could say more. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried quietly, sitting on the cold tile floor like I used to when she was little and money was tight, and I didn't want her to see me fall apart. I told myself she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I was wrong. 3 nights later, she asked me to sit down. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't yell. She simply told me it was time for me to go. She chose the kitchen table for the conversation. That should have warned me. Nothing good ever happened at that table anymore. The overhead light was too bright, making everything look harsh and exposed. She sat straight, backed in her chair, hands folded neatly, the way she did when she was trying to stay in control. I stood for a moment before sitting, my legs suddenly unsteady. I've been thinking a lot. She began. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. This situation, she continued, gesturing vaguely around the room, it's not sustainable. The word situation stung, as if I were a problem to be solved. I don't understand. I said slowly. I live here. I raised you here. She exhaled, rubbing her temple. I know, and I appreciate everything you've done, truly, but my life is changing. I need space, independence. From me? I asked. She hesitated, just long enough. Yes, she said. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds in a moment that didn't feel ordinary at all. I'm not asking you to leave forever, she said quickly. Just for a while, until I get settled. Where am I supposed to go? I asked. She shrugged, not dramatically, almost apologetically. You could stay with a friend, or find a small apartment. You have savings. I laughed then. A short, breathless sound that surprised even me. Emily, I said, those savings are my retirement. I'm still working. I can't just. She cut me off. You'll be fine. That phrase, you'll be fine, felt like a door closing. I need the house to reflect who I am now, she continued. I'm hosting investors, colleagues, people who expect a certain environment. And I don't fit into that environment. I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She slid an envelope across the table. What's this? I asked, though I already knew. Enough money for a deposit and a few months' rent. She said, I thought it would help. Help? I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. You're paying me to leave? I said. Her jaw tightened. I'm trying to be practical. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking now, and I didn't bother hiding it. I gave you everything, I said. Every late night, every sacrifice. I stayed when your father left. I worked myself sick to keep this roof over our heads. I didn't ask you to. She snapped, the first crack in her calm. That hurt more than anything she'd said so far. I was your mother, I replied. That's what mothers do. She pushed her chair back, standing as well. And now, I'm an adult with responsibilities. I can't carry you with me forever. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. I'm not asking you to carry me, I whispered. I just want to stay in my home. She looked at me, then really looked, and for a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, doubt, fear, then it was gone. I need you out by Friday, she said. 3 days, I packed quietly. I didn't argue, I didn't beg. Pride is a strange thing. It keeps you upright even when your heart is breaking. I folded clothes I'd worn for years, touched objects that suddenly felt like artifacts from another life. The house creaked around me as if it knew what was happening. Emily avoided me. She stayed out late, came home on phone calls, never asked if I needed help. On the morning I left, she wasn't there. I loaded my car alone. Before I drove away, I stood in the driveway and looked at the house one last time. The windows reflected the sky, blank and unreadable. I wondered if she'd ever miss me once I was gone. I stayed with my sister. She didn't ask many questions, just hugged me and made tea. Her apartment was small, smelled like lavender and old books. I slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of Emily's life, searching for the point where I'd failed her. The first night, my phone stayed silent. The second night, too. On the third day, I tried to distract myself by walking around the neighborhood. The world felt unchanged, people shopping, laughing, living their lives while mine had shattered. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Emily. For a split second, hope flared in my chest. Maybe she'd realized what she'd done. Maybe she wanted me to come home. I answered, "Mom," she said, and her voice was different, not controlled, not confident, shaky. I need your help." I stopped walking. Cars passed by, the sound distant. "What's wrong?" I asked. There was a pause, then a sob. "Everything," she whispered. "I messed up. Please, I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes. 3 days after throwing me out, my daughter was begging for my help, and I had a decision to make. I didn't answer her right away, not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid that if I spoke too quickly, my voice would betray everything I was feeling. The anger, the hurt, the part of me that wanted to say, "Now you know how it feels." "Mom," she said again, her voice breaking. "Are you there?" "Yes," I replied quietly. "I'm here." That was all I could manage. She told me to come back to the house. "I don't feel safe," she said, "and the police were already here once." That word, police, snapped me fully back into my body. "What happened?" I asked. She inhaled sharply, like the story itself hurt to breathe out. "I trusted the wrong people," she said. "The advisor, the one I told you about, he wasn't just advising." I sat down on the curb, my legs suddenly weak. "Emily," I said slowly, "tell me exactly what's going on." The story came out in fragments at first. The financial advisor had introduced her to opportunities, private investments, short-term placements with guaranteed returns. She'd signed documents she didn't fully understand, documents buried under pages of legal language and urgency. He made her feel foolish for asking questions, told her this was how serious people did business, and she wanted to be taken seriously. She transferred money, large amounts, then larger ones. At first, everything seemed fine. She received statements, reports, polished emails filled with confident language. Then the messages slowed, then stopped altogether. By the time she realized something was wrong, it was too late. "I think they've taken most of it," she said, her voice barely audible now. "I don't even know how much is left." I closed my eyes. "And the police?" I asked. They came because someone tried to break in last night, she whispered. I think they know where I live. I think they know I'm alone. Alone, the word landed differently now. I shouldn't have pushed you out, she said, sobbing openly. I was scared, Mom. I didn't know how to handle everything. I thought if I looked strong, if I acted like I didn't need anyone, it would all work out. I didn't interrupt her. I let her talk until the words ran out and only her crying remained. When she finally quieted, she asked, Will you come back? I looked up at the sky, pale and cloudless. 3 days earlier, she'd told me to pack my things like I was excess baggage. Now she wanted me to return not as an equal, not as family, but as a shield. I'll come, I said finally, but not the way things were, she sniffed. What do you mean? I mean we're going to do this the right way, I said. No secrets, no control games, and you listen to me, even when you don't like what I'm saying. Yes, she said quickly. Anything. When I arrived at the house it felt different. The lights were all on, curtains drawn tight. Emily sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, eyes red and swollen. She looked smaller somehow, younger. Like the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, she stood when she saw me, hesitated, then collapsed into my arms. I'm sorry, she whispered over and over. I'm so sorry. I held her. I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. We sat at the kitchen table again, the same table where she'd told me to leave. Now it was covered in papers, folders, legal notices. Her hands shook as she pushed them toward me. I don't even know where to start, she said. I took a deep breath. Then we start at the beginning, I replied, and we slow down. Over the next 2 days, I became something I never expected to be again, the steady one. I called my old coworker's husband, a retired accountant. I contacted a legal aid office. I insisted Emily stop all communication with the advisor and anyone connected to him. We changed locks, installed cameras, filed reports. Emily followed my instructions quietly, without argument. Each okay, she said, carried the weight of a lesson learned too late. On the 3rd evening back, after everything had been done that could be done for the day, she finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. Are you going to leave again? She asked, staring at her hands. I considered her carefully. I'm not leaving tonight, I said. But things are different now. She nodded. I know. I'm not here because of the house, I continued. And I'm not here because you lost money. I'm here because you're my daughter, but that doesn't erase what happened. Tears slid down her cheeks. I thought money would make me powerful, she said. Instead, it made me stupid. No, I corrected gently. It made you human, and it showed you who you listened to and who you stopped listening to. She looked up at me then, eyes filled with something new. Respect. The days that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. There's a difference between silence that heals and silence that waits. Ours was the second kind. The house held its breath with us, every creak of the floorboards too loud, every passing car outside making Emily flinch. She jumped at the doorbell, checked her phone obsessively, slept with the light on. I moved back into my old room, but it didn't feel like reclaiming anything. It felt like occupying a memory. My clothes hung in the closet like they were waiting to be told whether they belonged there or not. At night, I lay awake listening to Emily pace the hallway. The soft thud of her steps, a reminder that fear doesn't vanish just because you admit it. On the 4th day after my return, she asked me to sit with her again. This time, she didn't choose the kitchen table. She chose the living room, sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch like she used to when she was young and overwhelmed with homework or heartbreak. I took the armchair across from her. I've been thinking, she said, pulling at the sleeve of her sweater. About everything. I waited. I don't think I should be in charge of anything right now. She continued. The money that's left, the decisions, I don't trust myself. That admission mattered more than any apology she'd given so far. What are you saying? I asked. She swallowed. I want to give you power of attorney, temporarily, until we figure things out. I studied her face. This wasn't about control anymore, it was about relief. I don't want your money, I said carefully. I know, she replied. That's why I trust you. Trust, the word felt fragile between us. If we do this, I said, there will be boundaries, clear ones. I won't manage your life. I'll help protect what's left and make sure you don't sign anything without understanding it. She nodded quickly. Yes, please. We met with a lawyer 2 days later. A woman this time older than me, with kind eyes and a voice that didn't rush. She asked questions. She explained consequences. She made Emily pause before every signature. Watching my daughter listen, really listen, stirred something in me. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Just a quiet sadness that she'd had to lose so much to learn how to slow down. Word began to spread, not in headlines or public records, but in the subtle way news travels through families and communities. Relatives called with concern. Friends suddenly remembered my number. People who hadn't checked on me when I was pushed out wanted to know if Emily was okay. I answered politely. Briefly, I didn't share details. Emily noticed. They don't deserve to know, she said one evening. No, I replied, but you don't need to punish them either. Let people reveal who they are. The investigation moved slowly. Painfully so, the advisor had vanished, offices emptied, phone numbers disconnected. The police told us what I already suspected: recovery would be difficult. Maybe impossible. Emily took it harder than she let on. One night, I found her sitting in the kitchen, staring at the dark window. I ruined everything, she said without turning around. You didn't ruin everything. I replied, you hurt people and you got hurt. There's a difference. I threw you out, she whispered. I treated you like an inconvenience. Yes, I said. She flinched, and that choice, I continued, will stay with both of us. But it doesn't have to define the rest of your life. She turned to face me then, eyes glossy. How did you forgive Dad when he left? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. I didn't, I said honestly, not right away. Forgiveness isn't a feeling, it's a decision you revisit again and again. She nodded slowly. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said. I hope one day you won't regret helping me. I reached for her hand. I don't regret helping my child, I said. I regret that you had to learn this lesson alone. The public consequences came quietly. Emily's new friends disappeared. Invitations stopped. The people who admired her for her wealth lost interest once it faded. She noticed, and it hurt more than the financial loss. I thought they liked me, she said once. They liked what you represented. I replied. Now you get to see who stays when there's nothing to gain. She began volunteering at a local community center, her idea, not mine. She said she needed perspective. I didn't question it. And slowly, without ceremony, the house began to feel like ours again. Not because of ownership papers or money, but because we were both learning how to stand in it honestly. The real consequences didn't arrive with sirens or courtroom drama. They came quietly, in the way doors stopped opening. Emily learned that lesson the hard way. A month after everything unraveled, she was invited to a charity fundraiser, one of the few invitations that still came her way. She stood in front of the mirror for a long time that night, adjusting her dress, smoothing her hair, practicing a smile that didn't quite stick. "Do I look normal?" she asked me. "You look like yourself." I replied, at the event she tried to blend in. But money has a way of being the unspoken language in rooms like that. People noticed, questions circled. Conversations cooled once they realized the fortune everyone had whispered about was no longer intact. We left early. In the car, Emily stared out the window, silent. They didn't even ask how I was, she said eventually. They just wanted to know what happened to the money. I kept my eyes on the road. Now you know the cost of being admired for the wrong reasons. The legal process dragged on. Occasionally, we'd receive updates, another dead end, another technicality. Each letter felt like reopening a wound. Emily read them carefully, then folded them away, her face set with a calm that came from exhaustion rather than peace. One afternoon, an old friend of hers stopped by unannounced. A woman I didn't recognize stood at the door, sunglasses perched on her head, designer purse hanging from her arm. She smiled brightly when Emily answered. "I heard you were back home," she said, glancing past Emily into the house. Emily didn't invite her in. "I am," she replied simply. The woman shifted, uncomfortable. "So is everything okay? I mean financially?" Emily's jaw tightened. "That's not something I discuss anymore," she said. The woman laughed awkwardly. "Right, of course, I just thought." "I know what you thought," Emily interrupted, her voice steady but firm. "And this isn't that place anymore." The woman left shortly after. Emily closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a shaky breath. "That felt awful," she said. "That," I replied, "was you choosing dignity. The community noticed too." Whispers traveled about the inheritance, the fallout, the advisor who vanished. Some people looked at Emily with pity, others with judgment, a few with quiet respect for the way she showed up now, smaller, humbler, but more present. She started attending family gatherings again. The first time was tense. Conversations stalled when she entered the room. She sat beside me, hands folded, eyes down. Then my cousin spoke up. "I'm glad you came," she said gently. Emily looked up, surprised, me too. She replied, "That was enough to break the ice. Not everyone was kind." An aunt pulled me aside once and whispered, "You should have let her face the consequences alone." I met her gaze evenly. She is facing them. I just didn't abandon her while she did. The biggest consequence, though, was internal. Emily began questioning everything she once believed. I thought independence meant not needing anyone, she said one evening as we washed dishes together. But I think I just confused it with isolation. I smiled faintly. A lot of people do. She rinsed a plate slowly. I was so afraid of being seen as weak. And now, I asked, she considered, now I'm afraid of becoming that person again. That fear wasn't a bad thing. It kept her grounded. One afternoon, a letter arrived addressed to both of us. The advisor had been located. Arrested in another state, charges filed, the money, most of it, gone for good. Emily read the letter in silence, then handed it to me. "I don't feel relieved," she said. "I just feel empty. That's grief." I told her, "Not just for the money, for the person you thought you were becoming." She nodded. Later that night, she knocked on my bedroom door. "Can I ask you something?" she said, "Of course." If the money had never come, she asked quietly, "Would I still be the person you raised?" I thought carefully before answering. "You were always capable of becoming both versions." I said, "The money just revealed which one you were listening to." She swallowed hard. "I don't ever want to forget this," she said. "You won't." I replied, "Not if you keep choosing humility." The house felt different now, not restored, but redefined. We no longer pretended nothing had happened. We didn't tiptoe around it either. It lived between us, acknowledged, heavy, but no longer poisonous. And slowly, Emily began rebuilding something far more valuable than wealth. Her character. Healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with apologies wrapped in bows or sudden moments of clarity. It comes quietly, disguised as routine, as small choices made over and over again when no one is watching. For us, it started with mornings. Emily began waking up earlier, not to take calls or check markets, but to sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, reading actual books again, not reports, not projections. Just stories. Sometimes she'd underline passages, like she used to in school. I joined her some mornings. We didn't always talk. We didn't need to. The house settled into a gentler rhythm. We cooked together again, nothing fancy. Soup, stir, fry, the kind of meals you make when you're not trying to impress anyone. Emily burned the toast one morning and laughed, really laughed, like she hadn't in months. "Guess I still like it strong," she said, handing me a slice. I took a bite. It was awful. I smiled anyway. She found a job, a real one, entry level at a nonprofit that helped families navigate financial hardship. When she told me, she looked nervous, like she expected me to question it. I think I need to learn from the ground up, she said. I think that's wise, I replied. Her first paycheck was modest. She held it in her hands like it was fragile. This feels different, she said. It should. I told her, you earned it. She started paying for groceries, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She fixed things around the house instead of hiring people, learned how to replace a faucet, painted the spare room herself, splattering paint on her jeans and leaving it there. I like knowing I can do things, she said. So did I. One evening, months after everything had happened, she asked me to sit down with her again. This time it didn't feel like a negotiation. I've been thinking about the house, she said. I waited. I don't want it to ever feel like it's mine in a way that pushes you out again. She continued, I want us to make it right, legally. My heart thudded. I spoke to the lawyer, she said. I want to add your name back, fully, no conditions. I studied her face for any sign of pressure, guilt, obligation. I saw none. You don't have to do that, I said. I know, she replied. I want to. I nodded slowly. Then we'll do it together. We signed the paperwork a week later. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt anchored. That night we sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the trees. The air smelled like cut grass and summer heat. I was so sure money would protect me. Emily said, I didn't realize it would test me instead. Everything that matters tests us. I replied. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Thank you for not walking away, she said. I considered it. I admitted softly. She stiffened. Really, yes, I said, not to punish you, to protect myself. She nodded, absorbing that. I'm glad you stayed, she said. So am I. I replied, we don't talk about the $33 million much anymore. It's not a forbidden topic. It's just no longer central. What remains of it is managed carefully, quietly. Emily lives within her means now, plans realistically, dreams cautiously. Our relationship isn't what it was before. It's more honest. Sometimes late at night, I think about the woman I was when she told me to leave. The way my hands shook, the way my heart broke in a room I'd once felt safe in. I don't carry bitterness toward that version of her anymore. I see her as someone who lost her footing in a storm and lashed out at the nearest anchor, and I see myself as someone who learned that love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be erased. That lesson stays with me. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and the world feels far away, I sit in the same kitchen where everything fell apart and I listen. I listen to the hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock, the sound of my daughter breathing down the hall, steady and safe. And I think about how close we came to losing each other, not because of hate, but because of fear wearing the mask of independence. Money didn't turn my daughter into a stranger overnight. It simply gave her the illusion that she no longer needed roots. And I learned something too. I learned that loving your child doesn't mean shrinking yourself so they can stand taller. It means standing firm enough to remind them where they came from. I could have closed the door when she called me crying. I could have let pride win. Some days that would have been easier. But love, real love, isn't about keeping score. It's about choosing wisdom over revenge, even when your heart is bruised. We didn't get a perfect ending. We got something better. Truth, boundaries, and a second chance built on humility instead of money. So I'll ask you this gently, the way life asks us all its hardest questions. If the person who hurt you came back broken and afraid, would you help them or would you walk away? There's no easy answer, only the one you can live with. If this story touched something in you, you're not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories about family, forgiveness, and hard-earned lessons, stay with me a while. We're all learning how to love better one story at a time.